My name's Lisa Canning. Welcome to Toot Your Own Horn, Music Matters. I am launching this podcast because music is a really deep and personal subject matter. For most of us who play a wind instrument, we all have a story about why we started and why music really matters to us. And for me, that story began in what should have been the 5th grade. For most of us that start a wind instrument when we're lucky enough to get to have a tryout night in the gym, a lot of us experience that. But for me, I skipped the 5th grade. I was living in Chicago with my family. My dad was a criminal attorney and was very successful, but decided to buy into a bankrupt foundry business because quite honestly, he had never lost a case, and the mob wanted him to do work for them, and my dad was too ethical. So he left the law in Illinois and bought into a bankrupted foundry business in Whitewater, Wisconsin. And when he did that, I went from being in a Montessori school into being in a public school system in a farming community. And I had to take standardized tests to be able to be placed into a graded school system. And I, unfortunately, as a baby, as a child, almost passed away in my crib. My grandmother found me and I was blue. And I have always had what I call Alzheimer's as a child going forward. I have a very poor memory. I can't remember things that most people can. I have a very, very, very poor memory. And so the kind of intelligence I have is a little bit different than other people. I remember big blocks of things. So when they gave me a standardized test, I didn't do very well. But when they gave me an IQ test, I tested extremely well. So I wound up skipping the 5th grade. And that was the most important grade for learning a band instrument. So when I got into 6th, I asked my mom, hey Mom, I see my friends that I am starting to sit with at lunch play a band instrument and I would like to do that. And she said, well, we'll have to see. So one of my friends lived on a farm and her name was Kathleen. And Kathleen and I became friends and we would hang out on the weekends, and her family had a dairy farm and her family taught me how to put the machines onto the cows and to milk the cows, and then we would take a pail of milk and we would skim off the cream on the top and we would use it for our cereal in the morning, and we had the best time. It was a big adventure going from living in the downtown Chicago to being on a farm and learning how to milk cows. It was really cool. One of the things that was really cool about Kathleen was that she played the clarinet. And after we would milk the cows, we would take out this case, and it had all these shiny buttons. And she would put it together, and it would be like this jewel tone experience of how do you assemble this instrument and get it to make a sound. Let me show you. So Kathleen would take out her clarinet and she would show me each of the parts with all of the holes. And I would look at the keys with this mystery because they were shiny. And I thought it was just the coolest looking thing, right? And each part had all of these amazing like artwork. Look at how pretty this instrument is. It's like art, right? It's just so beautiful. And she would teach me how to put it together, right? Because the bridge had to line up. And when I was a beginner, it was the coolest thing, learning how to line the bridge up and feeling like this instrument went together in such a cool way. And being able to learn how to put the bell on, that was so much fun. And you had to have a barrel to be able to play it. So you put the barrel on. And then, of course, this thing doesn't play at all, even if you can put the keys down without a mouthpiece, right? Because you have to have a mouthpiece to be able to do this, right? And it has to have a reed on it, and you have to know how to play this thing, right? And put it onto the instrument itself. And the reed has to go in your mouth. So like when you're 10, the idea of like, because you always have suckers or lollipops, or, you always have stuff you put in your mouth, ice cream cones and things. So like getting to suck on something and that this thing is going to make a sound. And then you have to learn how to put the reed on the mouthpiece without breaking it. And then that magical moment. And of course, nothing comes out at first, and you squeak, and you make all these funny sounds. That's when the magic begins, because all of a sudden you realize that there's something inside of you that wants to come out, and it just inspires you to push these buttons down, and as you do, it's almost like liquid emotion starts coming out of you. And it's hard to explain what happens when you play a wind instrument for the first time, but there's magic in feeling like your breath becomes joy or music, or it becomes anger, or it becomes passion, or it becomes what you feel inside of you. And it's the coolest thing. It's very, very hard to explain. So my friend Kathleen would put this thing together, and she would make these sounds, and I would watch her, and I would just sit there with my mouth open going, wow. And she was squeaking and squawking and making all kinds of sounds, and I just thought it was really cool. So we would go through this routine every once in a few weeks, and I would come by her house, and we would milk the cows, and we would skim the cream off the top of the milk pail, and we'd have our cereal. And then after she played for a few minutes, she'd go, hey, Lisa, do you want to try this? And I'm like, yeah, would you show me? And so she would show me how to do it. And we were friends for, all that whole year. And during that whole year, I learned how to play the clarinet. And then one day, under the, I think it might have been Christmas or Easter, I think it was Christmas actually, under the tree, wrapped up, was a Bundy clarinet. 𝐓𝐶 made a Bundy clarinet, and under it was a Bundy clarinet, which was the very first clarinet that I ever got. And it was my very own thing to cover my fingers and learn how to make my own funny sounds on. And I just couldn't have been any happier to play that every single day, because it was in my own little world, in my own little way. I could make my own little ideas come to life that were inside of me and have them all come out. Because see, that's the joy of getting to toot your own horn. When you toot your own horn, all of the things inside of you can be said out loud, but no one actually has to hear a word that you say. It is the most joyous experience of being able to learn how to express yourself and connect all the dots without necessarily having to get in anyone's face, or necessarily having to be sure with conviction that you want to say those things to somebody for sure. So that experience really has kept me involved in music my entire life. From there, unfortunately, I discovered that my mother was really a very toxic person. I grew up in this middle class, upwardly mobile middle class family that was capable of paying for private lessons and capable of paying for private schools for me. And my mother had a very severe drinking problem, and she was capable of affording very nice lifestyle for our family and helping to support my education with my father, but she was a scary person and not somebody that I wanted to stay at home with. And so it is because of this beautiful instrument, the ability that I could play this instrument, that I was able to afford to get an education. And I was able to go to boarding school and go to 𝐓𝐿 Arts Academy and then to Northwestern University. And as a result of that, I realized that maybe if I sold these instruments, that maybe I could pay my phone bill and my mother couldn't try to control my life. And so I started a business at 17 that was around the clarinet, and I realized that lots of people needed the joy of playing a musical instrument for all the reasons that I just shared with you. And it became a lifelong passion to use the instrument for ways to try to better ourselves and better our abilities to express ourselves, and maybe make life a little bit easier by building up some skills that are soft skills that make life a little bit more tolerable. So welcome to Toot Your Own Horn. And our guests will be from all walks of life with all kinds of different backgrounds. None of them will be all like me. Some of them will be professional musicians. Some of them will be amateur musicians. We hope to have some famous people as well that will join our podcast. But we definitely want to show a broad range of students and professionals and amateurs and people from all walks of life who have loved the instrument for different reasons. And I am so appreciative that you want to learn about wind playing, and hopefully you'll find it in your heart to come to it and to find it in you to see what it can do for you to be a wind player. So we hope that one day too, you will toot your own horn. Thanks for joining me today.